The Celtics win banner 18. Jayson Tatum played really well to close the series, and I'm kind of wondering, did he unlock something that could take him to that next level of NBA superstardom? And is this possibly the one time where it might be somewhat appropriate to bring up the D word? Not that D word. The Celtics win last night in Game 5 of the NBA Finals to close out the Dallas Mavericks 106-88 at home, and it never really felt that close. That was a welcomed bounce back for the Celtics after the way that they played in Game 4, with the Mavericks just completely running them out of the gym in Dallas. Granted, you can't really fake that kind of desperation, but it still was disheartening at the time when the Celtics were down by 40 in the NBA Finals, and you started thinking, well, what's going on here? And then we had is this going to be the team that finally comes down from 3-0 and wins the... No, it wasn't, and the Celtics made sure of it last night. Jaylen Brown wins Finals MVP, and let me just... I know it's going to be out there somewhere, somebody's saying it, probably right now that I'm not watching at this very moment. Somebody's saying, does this mean that Jaylen Brown is better than Jayson Tatum? And no thanks. I'm not here for that particular conversation. It's okay for Jaylen Brown to have had a great series and a great playoff run, and Jayson Tatum to still be their best player. Like, nuance is okay in sports, as much as we like to think that it has to be completely polarizing and there's not any semblance of constructive debate. I want to get into why the opportunity was even there, though, for Jaylen Brown, and it's partly because Jaylen Brown played so well on both ends of the floor. It also does stem from where Jayson Tatum has been inconsistent throughout his career in these big games at times, right? Like, he's always kind of just below that tier 1 star. And it really shows itself, I think, in these late rounds of the playoffs, the biggest stage when competition is at its highest. We're talking conference finals and finals where, like, stars of the past have separated themselves from the rest of their peers and the rest of the stars in the league, and Tatum's not had that separation. He's had flashes, and he's also had disappointment. And I think it comes back to he isn't quite those stars of the past in multiple ways. First is athleticism. He doesn't have the burst of a guy like Jordan, who, amongst his competition, it didn't matter if there were 4 of you. He was going to score. He was going to get by. He was going to finish. He was going to do whatever circus shot. He could hang in the air like almost no other human being on the face of the planet ever. And just like kind of, those highlights that you saw of Jordan where he would go up and he would still be hanging there. The defender is right there with him, hand up, contesting, and the defender lands, and Jordan's still just up there. And he gets it off, like, right before his feet touch the floor, and he finishes. And, like, it's stuff like that where that just set Jordan apart. And now, is it fair to compare Jayson Tatum to Michael Jordan? No, it's not, and that's okay. I'm just using that as an example of, like, that is the apex pinnacle of best, biggest superstar in the NBA of that time. He doesn't have the strength of a guy like LeBron, who it didn't matter if you had 3 or 4 on him. He was either going to finish through you, or he was going to kick out and find the wide open 3-point shooter and make the right basketball play and beat you that way. He was going to find a way. That next level of sheer superstardom amongst his peers and other stars in the league. A guy like Kobe, who had the precision that Tatum just doesn't quite have. That was just guaranteed. It didn't matter if there were 3, 4 guys paying attention to him, he was going to get to the spot on the floor he wanted to get to, particularly that elbow jumper, and there was nothing you were going to do to stop him from getting that shot off. Tatum doesn't quite have that level to go to, right? And so when you get to the conference finals, the finals, and he's got 2 or 3 guys that he has to account for every time he touches the ball because they're accounting for him, he doesn't have that just like next level skill to turn to. That doesn't mean he's trash. That doesn't mean he's not a star. That doesn't mean he sucks by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that's why he ends up favoring things like that step back 3 that I wish he would never take ever again. But I get it. I get why he goes to that. With that slight limitation athletically and in precision, it's a bit more of make or miss mathematics with Tatum, right? Is he making his tough jumpers? Is he finishing in traffic? That's been the formula. Answer yes, dominant performance. Answer no, disappointing performance. That's why I believe Jayson Tatum has had a bit of a ceiling in his ascension as an NBA star. He's hit a wall at being in that 5 to 10 best guys in the league range as opposed to that 1 through 4. But I want to talk about that ceiling, that wall, for just a minute and just pose the question, can it still move? Is there still room for him to ascend? Or is he just kind of stuck? I think it can still move. I think he can still improve, and I think he can still get to that top tier of player in the league. And I don't think that it's because he's going to somehow find some magic burst athletically. I don't think it's because he's going to all of a sudden start hitting 35% of those step back and sidestep threes that he relies on so much and then just become unguardable because he's going to get that shot and make it. I don't think that's what it's going to be. But I think that what we saw, particularly in this finals series, some glimpses of, could unlock it for him. But before I talk about that piece, it needs to be put into context. Who are the best players in the league that are in the conversation and generally finish ahead of him, at least in recent years, right? Jokic, Luka, Giannis, SGA this year, Joel Embiid. Earlier in his career, he was bumping up against LeBron. What do a lot of those guys have that Tatum doesn't, aside from like Joel Embiid's size, right? Like Giannis's size. We're not talking about, I'm talking, within the context of, wing and perimeter players, what do they have that Tatum hasn't really possessed or really shown much of? And it's playmaking, distributing for others. Jokic, Luka, LeBron, some of the best passers we've ever seen play in the NBA. And for Jokic and Luka, that's a big reason that they're able to dominate on offense without having the athleticism really at all in comparison and into context. Like I mentioned that Tatum's kind of like a half notch down athletically from like the greats ever, right? Like from the very, very, very top tier ever kind of conversation of athleticism. He's still a freak athlete and very athletic by NBA standards. Jokic and Luka are not, but their passing vision make them almost unguardable at times. And Tatum hasn't been that. He's been a scorer with a game that's been mainly modeled after a Kobe type, but slightly less athletic, slightly less precise, and definitely less confident than that top tier, that top pinnacle of what it's being modeled after, the Kobe. But this finals series, when the shot wasn't falling, Tatum didn't become passive. He didn't become irrelevant. He didn't always have it figured out, but he stayed effective on offense through his passing. Let's go through the games. Game 1, 5 assists, 6 turnovers, not good. Didn't have it figured out. Game 2, 12 assists, 3 turnovers. Game 3, 5 assists, 2 turnovers. Game 4, throwing it out because it was a buzzsaw. Game 5, 11 assists, 2 turnovers. I'm not here to try to convince you that Jayson Tatum is Magic Johnson from a distribution standpoint, but I noticed multiple passes in last night's game in particular where a guy just missed a bunny or missed a wide open corner three. That 31 and 11 stat line could have looked even better. And doing it in the finals means something to me. This is a guy who reached a career high in assists this year at 4.9 for the season. He turned that up to 6.3 in the playoffs and 7.2 in the finals, which included that Game 4 debacle, by the way. I didn't remove it from the statistics for this. Let's say he keeps scoring 27 to 30 a game like he has the past 4 years. Let's say he keeps grabbing 7 or 8 rebounds a game like he has for the past 6. But he increases those assists from 4 to 7. Could he get to 8? Even just being above 6, right? Like that level of playmaking in addition to everything else that he does. Playing both ends of the floor like he does. Team success like they have had his entire career. Is that enough to move him into those MVP conversations for real? To try to push him into that, top 4 of the best in the league? Or is he still just going to be a slight notch below in that 5 to 10 range? I think that potentially moves him up because it means that he'll be making life easier for his teammates, and he'll be making it easier on himself for his scoring because the defense has to worry about his passing too, which makes him harder to guard. And I will reiterate, he plays defense. I would rather have that version of a player than a guy like Luka Doncic, who is absolutely generational, sensational, incredible. How many words can I find that describe what Luka Doncic can do on the offensive end? Infinite. But on defense? Complete liability. Borderline detriment to his team. If he even gets up to get back on defense and isn't jawing at the refs. But this isn't about burying Luka. He's probably going to get enough of that after losing in the finals. That's not what this is. That is, Luka is a top 2, top 3. He's in that 1 through 4. And if you're telling me that Jayson Tatum is going to keep being the scorer that he's been, the rebounder that he's been, the defender that he's been, the winner that he's been, and he's going to start passing, maybe not at the Luka level, but at a level that is well above average for your NBA wings, and open that up in his game to where the defense has to account for him as both a scorer and a facilitator. To me, that's the one thing that could punch him through to that top tier conversation of the best NBA star level that has eluded him so far. While we're talking about things like team success, let's talk about that stupid question that Joel Embiid got the other night on TV. Are these Celtics a dynasty? He was asked that before they even won the championship. No. Now they have won the championship. Are they a dynasty now? No. But they could become one. And I think they have a more realistic chance at that than most of the time when people bring this up and that tired narrative starts right after a team wins a championship. Let's look at it through the lens of Jayson Tatum's career. 68 and 45 in the playoffs. 5 conference finals in 7 years. 7 playoff appearances. 2 finals trips. 1 championship. 26 years old. Prime just started. That's already half a decade in the conference finals since he got drafted there. Is that enough to be a dynasty? Again, no. But they've got this team, which is been historically dominant by the numbers, all coming back next year. Most of the guys on this roster are locked up for multiple years. The only ones that you have to worry about are Derek White and Al Horford, who only have a year left. You got to figure Horford's going to retire, right? 17 years in the league now, finally got his championship. He may play next year, but I'm guessing he's hanging it up. Derek White could be difficult to get signed with how expensive this roster is going to be, particularly after a Tatum extension. But it's not like this team is on its last leg together, right? There's still a window here. And there's no reason to think that if these guys aren't healthy, they won't remain competitive at the highest level, even as pieces rotate and move around Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown as they continue through their prime. Am I guaranteeing that they're going to repeat next year? No. But they're going to have a shot. Unless the East gets considerably better at the top, they're going to be favored to get out of it, right? Like, it's more plausible for them to repeat than a lot of our other recent champions that we've had. And if they do, if they're able to not even say repeat, but let's just say that they're able to get another couple of rings in this stretch of Tatum and Brown's prime, it would be realistic to look back on this span of Celtics basketball over the past decade plus and say, in total, that was a dynastic type of stretch. Do I think they will? No, probably not. It's just really, really hard to do that. But they've got a more realistic shot at it than, say, the Nuggets, who that was the conversation last year, right? The Nuggets win the championship, and we said, is this the start of a dynasty? They had just won their first title with limited success coming before that, with a 28-year-old Nikola Jokic as their MVP type of a player who's already been in the league at that point for whatever it was, 8 or 9 years, and is a big man who, quite frankly, would rather be at the horse stables than an NBA star. So the idea that the Nuggets were about to start like a decade-long domination after that title was, quite frankly, laughable and clickbait. But this Celtics team, they've had success leading up to this. They were ahead of schedule, and they just got their first ring in year 7 for Tatum, right? Which is pretty much right on time. If they could get 2, 3 more even potentially in the next 5, 6 plus years, then we're talking like a dozen, 13, 14 years with, at that point, you would have 10 or more Eastern Conference Finals appearances. You'd have multiple trips to the finals with 3, 4, 5 rings potentially. The franchise would have surpassed 20 banners in total. Like, I'd say that would qualify as a dynastic run. I don't think they'll I don't think they'll get there, but I don't think it's that crazy of a conversation to start with this team in particular, given its success to this point leading up to that first championship. Do you? Sound off in the comments. Let me know. Give me all your Jayson Tatum's only 19 and all of those. On top of, is it crazy to think that he could ascend further into that top like MVP candidate level? Is it crazy that this Celtics team could possibly be talking dynasty at, by the time his prime is over? Let me know. Use the comments. Hit the like button too. YouTube likes that and it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. And go ahead and subscribe while you're there as well.